One of the things you hear about a lot is evidence for evolution. Evidence for evolution. You know, they shove it in our kids' faces. They're shoving it in the youth, and even the adult have grown to be attached to this fantasy. You know, when you hear something long enough and so many times, then you will start to believe it. This is something that Hitler said. He said, if you tell a lie long enough and loud enough, you will start to believe it. And what a coincidence, because one of the things Hitler believed in was evolution. And it's what drove his morality. This is what made him get into eugenics and pretty much believing that, you know, a stronger race of people is what is needed to make this human race continue to live. And that's what he tried to do. He tried to kill off what he thought were the weaker people, the blacks and the Jews and what he called dirty-skinned people. He believed, because his belief in evolution, that this was the right thing to do. And this is what evolution leads to. It leads to you believing you're a different kind of animal than other people, and it makes you look at people as just animals. So there's no true soul, there's no judgment after life, so there's no real reason to care about other people as long as unless it's benefiting you. But what kind of evidence do we really have for evolution? I believe if we're really having a honest look at the evidence, we'll see that the evidence is not for evolution. It's very strongly against evolution. First of all, the first piece of evidence that's against evolution is animals going extinct. Look at the dinosaurs. All the dinosaurs have gone extinct. They didn't turn into different animals. They went extinct. And we know this. Dinosaurs were land-dwelling reptiles with their feet under them. We no longer have these. Now it's a different kind of reptile. And I believe, as the Bible tells us, that these reptiles were already around with the dinosaurs, along with people. But these are animals going extinct, not turning into different kinds of animals. That is evidence against evolution. Today, there are between 200 and 2,000 animals going extinct every year. Is this evidence for evolution, or is it evidence for the opposite of evolution? Animals dying out and going extinct is not evolution, it's the opposite. Also, animals getting smaller. If we look back through our record of fossils, then we will see that animals were much bigger. Almost every kind of animal, sloths, penguins that were 7 feet tall, huge penguins, huge sloths, huge bugs. Almost every single animal was way bigger than they are today. Beavers were 2 times, 3 times the size. Everything was bigger. Things are getting smaller. Is this evidence of evolution? No. Evolution teaches that there was a one-cell organism, an amoeba, that turned into all these different kinds of other creatures. So they should be going from smaller to bigger and bigger. But that's not what we see. Even in so-called human evolution, we see that the so-called Neanderthal, which was only a human and a more advanced human in almost every way, bone structure, size, brain size, everything was bigger. So are we actually getting bigger and smarter? No. We've gotten smaller, and our brains have gotten smaller also. And we also live less. These things have been proven. Another thing, so more evidence against evolution is the increase in disease. There's an increase in disease all through the world. Health loss is on an increase, and it has been for years and years. This is not evidence of evolution. Also, there's more and more mutations, and although they try to make it out to be as though mutations is what causes evolution, the truth is 1.3, and this is being generous, 1.3% of mutations are beneficial. And out of all these mutations that take place, almost all of them consistently are harmful, and these mutations lead to death in species, and this is why we have a lot of these extinctions taking place, because of all these harmful mutations that are taking place. So with all these harmful mutations, Where is evolution coming from? It's 1.3%. Let's do the math here. Now, if 1.3% of mutations are beneficial and all the rest of them are harmful, how are we ever going to have this increase in life? Where will we ever have new life coming from? More and more things are dying out. More and more things are becoming extinct. More and more things are having more and more problems and complications because of mutations. So this is not going to lead into new species. It's going to lead into the death of already existing species. Now, also another thing, every generation that passes by in us humans, there's 100 to 200 new mutations passed on to each generation. So in other words, it's not as if we came from some lower life form and have evolved to what we are. It's actually the opposite. Adam and Eve were made good, as the Bible says. They were perfect, and this is why their children were able to interbreed without having any kind of defects and birth defects and all these type of things that now will happen from inbreeding. This is why their children were able to mate with each other, because they had a perfect genes and they were made perfectly. So nowadays we're not able to do this because of these mutations that are passing on from each generation. From 100 to 200 mutations pass on to every generation. So we are copies on top of copies on top of copies. If you have a computer program and you continue to copy it, the more you copy it, the more errors it will have in it. And this is the same way with us. The more we copy, the more messed up we become. And this is what is happening with humans. This is why we're dying out. This is not evolution. It is the opposite of evolution. So why do people still believe it? Why is it so popular? Why do people, why do people rush to this kind of information? Why do people gravitate towards evolution so much? Because it's plain and simple that if you don't believe in God, or you don't want to believe in God, you have to have some kind of religion. Everyone has a religion, because a religion is simply a belief of where life came from. And the fact is, people don't want to accept God. They don't want to accept the authority. They don't want anybody putting any kind of restrictions on their life, even if it's helpful for them. They don't want it. So since they don't want this, they have to start their own religion. And this is what evolution is. It's just a cop-out for the truth. So even though that all the evidence is pointing to the Bible, if the Bible was true and there was a flood, what kind of evidence would we have? Well, we'd have different layers of earth turned up and laid down each layer with millions and millions of dead animals buried inside the ground. And guess what? That's exactly what we have. So there's evidence for the flood. There's evidence for the Bible. There's evidence that life doesn't come from non-life. All this points to the Bible being true. But we will ignore this because we don't want to offend those that have different religions, or because people don't want to accept an authority figure. So this is why people will, go to the most illogical thing you could ever think of, and that is life coming from non-life, and everything popping out of existence from nowhere, which makes no sense. But if you're told it enough, then you will start to believe it, just like anything else. So it's important that we understand the moral motives that people have, that we all have hidden agendas. And then once we figure these out, we can start finding the truth. Here in John 3:19, this is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Something to think about.
Do take good care of yourself.